Hey everybody, welcome to our monthly holiday edition meetup. It's me, Aaron, the elf, and Nitish. Nitish, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got back from vacation recently. It was a lot of fun. It was a little wet and cold in Europe, but it was pretty much a blast. I am really excited today because, you know, in the industry, really, a lot has changed over the last 20, 30 years or so. But really, one of the things that developers try to get to is like this ability to have a single language to do everything, and it's never really existed back in the old days. It was C++ and et cetera, but or C even. But nowadays, JavaScript has become really, really popular. And with the advent of Node JS and modern JavaScript frameworks, you literally could build your backends, you could build services, you could build your front end with JavaScript, a single language. So I'm excited today that we're going to have somebody in a few seconds here to come talk about that. And it's going to be really exciting. Now, before we get to that, we do have our monthly little kind of housekeeping stuff that we need to do to kind of remind the community it's certain things going on here. So one, I'd like to remind the community that our developer portal, we have got a bunch of new videos that are actually on YouTube. So if you're watching a stream on YouTube, it's right on our YouTube channel. If not, you can go to our YouTube channel, which is if you want to go ahead and throw the link out, Nitish, you can go to that link, and it'll be here in the bottom of the stream here in a second. And that's where you can get our playlists of all of our new videos. We've got a new video series led by Dennis, and I believe you're also in there too, Nitish, right? Yeah, so we got some introduction videos to Couchbase. So if you're new to Couchbase and you want to learn a bunch about it, those videos are really, really great. Now, the other thing is maybe you're not new, but you have some team members that are new. Like maybe you have some new team members joining your team. These videos are great for them to kind of get up to running as fast as possible. It kind of explains Couchbase, goes through the basics, and kind of gets you very quickly up and running. The nice thing about the videos I love about them is that they're very small. Each video is about 5 to 10 minutes in length. So they're really kind of, you can sit down and chew through them pretty quickly. Now, another cool thing that recently happened is Coachbase Live, which is this cool website that we have that allows you to basically try out Nickel, our query language. It has support for Capella now, which is our cloud-based solution. So there's a new update for that that's available. And if you go to the URL down here, you can go through and try that out. So maybe if you're new to Couchbase or you just want to try out some Nickel queries, you can go to that website, and now it supports Capella. So you can sign up for a Capella trial. You can link your Capella trial or your Capella account to Couchbase Live, and you can do those queries. It's actually pretty neat. I've used it recently. I like it a lot. So the teams work really hard on it, and I think it's phenomenal. It's fast. It's responsive, and you can even do it on your iPad, which is pretty crazy. You could literally be writing Nickel queries on your iPad, which is pretty cool if you ask me. As always, you can go to our developer portal. That's at developer.couchbase.com/tutorials. And if you're looking to learn stuff about Couchbase, that's a great way to get started. We've got tutorials on actually some stuff we're going to talk about today. There's some tutorials out there. We've got mobile tutorials for the Couchbase Lite folks. We've got great tutorials on Java, JavaScript, ASP.NET, Python. Pretty much, if you think of a language, we probably have a tutorial out there for you on it. So go ahead and go through and try those out. We do have an upcoming webinar that's actually going to be, I believe, tomorrow. Is that correct, Nitish?
It's actually next Wednesday.
Okay,
it's
next
15th.
Wednesday. But time is all kind of weird here with the holiday season. But next Wednesday, there's going to be a great talk. Matt, one of our friends, he spoke last month. He's going to be talking about Capella, how to go through and set it up and query both JSON documents and do some querying. And that's going to be a really cool talk. So go ahead and sign up for that if you're interested in. And we also have some past videos on demand about Node.js and Capella. And we'll have some links there for a second on that, if you want to throw those out. And then finally, I know that we've got through a lot of leaks here, and we'll throw those out in chat also. Recently, you did a talk at one of the coolest conferences I've ever heard of. I've never heard of this. Pajamas in Python. Really?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that you don't need to travel anywhere, so you can stay in the comfort of your bed, watch some Python videos here. And this was pre-COVID.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty awesome. So I don't know what pajamas you wore. Maybe they're your Santa pajamas or your holiday pajamas. To find out, you're gonna have to go watch the video on demand. And so the videos are out on YouTube, and you can go through and check that out. We have a link right directly to Noticious Talk. And so if you're interested in Python, machine learning, you want to see how to do it at Couchbase, you can kind of do that. And of course, it's the holiday season, everybody. So ho ho ho. I want to, of course, wish everybody a happy holiday season, regardless of what religion or where you are in the world. I really hope that you and your family are having a safe and wonderful time. And with that, though, I want to bring on our good friend, Eric. Eric is a developer advocate on our team, and I consider him one of the gurus in JavaScript. He is super awesome at React and pretty much Node and anything else JavaScript. Eric, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you wonderfully. So, Eric, I believe that you've got some stuff to show us on both Node.js and Ottoman JS, which are two really great ways. We have some SDKs for both those that allow you to go through, build really awesome and really quick solutions for using JavaScript.
Yeah, so we're going to start off with, we're probably going to take up the whole hour. I think I'm the only speaker here today, so we'll try and take up as much of the hour as possible. Okay. Obviously, leaving some space for questions at the end, maybe 5-10 minutes of that. But we're going to start with basically a slide presentation on Ottoman. It's not super boring, though. There's a lot of code in the slides, and then we can open up a demo that has a lot of the same features, and you can see some of the live code. We'll run it against a local instance of Couchbase. And then we will move over to kind of full stack JavaScript development at Couchbase using the Node.js SDK. And we're going to take a look at a project that I have. I'll give links to that project if anyone wants to clone it down and run it. And what we're going to do with that one is, instead of connecting to a local instance of Couchbase, there's a few minor changes that I've made to the code that are not super needed, but like I've made them so that I can easily switch between a local instance and a Capella instance, which is our cloud offering here at Couchbase, and also kind of touch on some of the just kind of some of the setup that you need to do on Capella and things to keep in mind. But it's super easy. I found out that working with Capella was actually almost just as easy as connecting to a local instance, and maybe even easier because you don't have to spin up that local instance.
that sounds amazing, Eric. And of course, yeah, you don't have to run Docker now. You can just kind of run it out in the cloud. It's the modern world we live in. Well, you know what? Let's turn it over to you because I'm excited to learn about this and hear about it. I love JavaScript too, and let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and remove myself from the video and let you go.
Okay. All right. So hopefully you guys should be seeing my screen now. Is that correct? There we go. All right, so I'm going to start with some slides. This is kind of similar to one of the talks we did at Connect, but I've gone through, I've made some changes and kind of cut out anything that wasn't super necessary and focused on the stuff that is more necessary. So let's go ahead and just talk about the agenda, what we're going to talk about here in these slides. We're going to do an introduction to Ottoman. We're going to talk about why would you use Ottoman, some of the salient features, and a demo at the end. We'll probably just do that for a few minutes, but at least you'll get the ability to look into the code, which we have a link to at the end of these slides that you can basically go to that link and it'll take you directly to a repo. There's a nice README there, so that you have all the information you needed to pull that thing down and get a local Couchbase instance running and run this project against it. So let's go ahead and get started with the introduction. And so Ottoman, okay, kind of what is Ottoman? Ottoman's a Node.js ODM, so an object document mapper for Couchbase. Very similar to an ORM if you've used an ORM with a relational database before, but I think ODM has kind of more of a purpose with a document database system. Kind of one of the things is that in a document database system, you typically are just chucking any data in. As long as it's in an object document format, you can just chuck it in, and that's great. And but some of the things that you might need to do are validation. Now, in a relational database, there are ways to sometimes do this on the database side. With a document database, what you typically want to do is set up some type of an API layer to kind of handle some of that stuff. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I would say you might want to check out Ottoman. So an ODM kind of maps the JSON documents from Couchbase to a native JavaScript object in your application, like your API. It makes working with the Couchbase Node JS SDK more productive, and you can use JavaScript or TypeScript. So if you start using Ottoman, again, we have not only a sample JavaScript application, but a sample TypeScript application. They're exactly the same, with the only difference being that, again, one is written in JavaScript and one has the additional typings that come along with TypeScript. Under the hood, Ottoman uses the Node.js SDK from Couchbase. So when you install Ottoman into your API, you do not need to run npm install Couchbase, which is the Couchbase SDK. When you install Ottoman, you've got that underneath already. And we like to make sure that the latest version of Ottoman is always up to date with the latest SDK. Of course, there's always a few days, maybe a week or so, maybe that an SDK gets released and we release Ottoman with that new SDK, but we try to keep it pretty up to date. So why Ottoman? So the last diagram I gave you kind of gave you a macro look at Ottoman. But we're going to dive a little bit deeper and find out what features and developer experience you get out of Ottoman. And we'll talk about the 6 liddies. What are these liddies that I talk about? Basically words that end with L-I-T-I-E-S. So why Ottoman? First one we're going to go over is adaptability. So JavaScript is one of the top languages developers already know, ranked by Stack Overflow as the most used for the 9th year in a row, and is a de facto standard for the web. So, JavaScript is ubiquitous. TypeScript is also growing very fast, and a lot of people that know JavaScript and write JavaScript are kind of switching over when they need that extra typing and using TypeScript. So you might start a project in JavaScript, and what's really cool about TypeScript is that you can just start changing JavaScript file names from .js to .ts as long as your project supports it. And even when you change it to .ts, that JavaScript that's in there is already valid TypeScript. So you can kind of start to add TypeScript into your projects, one page at a time. Yeah. So affordability. So if Ottoman is an open source project. In an open source survey conducted by Tidelift, developers indicated the reasons why they use open source. So one, it helps to save money and development time versus maintaining their own libraries, right? You eliminate vendor lock-in, and there's no I can never say this word, proprietary licensing costs. So here we have basically a survey done by Tidelift, and just shows some of the different answers that they got from their survey. I'll give you a second if you want a screenshot of that or something. But Tidelift does some really cool surveys, and we used it kind of in research for developing these slides because we really wanted to talk about kind of, again, when we talk about why Ottoman, we want to talk about it from a standpoint of what does it give you with your data? How does it help kind of massage your data and kind of make sure that the data that you're inputting into your database has certain standards. Next is supportability. So the same survey also found that identifying and resolving security vulnerabilities is a major issue. A lot of people had concerns about upgrades of components and frameworks, and supportability addresses these concerns. So we do provide support, frequent scanning of the code repository, identifying vulnerabilities ahead of time. And these are all things that you should expect in a open source library. You won't always find them, but you should expect them. Sustainability. So sustainability is an extension of supportability. Out of 1,500 code bases that were examined by Black Duck, 90% were stale, not up to date within the past 2 years. This is what I'm talking about when, not all open sources projects are created equal. Sometimes, the people who were running those projects leave, stop updating it. As long as Ottoman is here at Couchbase, we're going to try to ensure that that does not happen. So it was found that developers spend about 20% of their time maintaining maintaining their own libraries. So Ottoman is fully maintained, updated to match the latest Node JS SDK, and features and bug fixes. So for our users, it's going to save development time. It's going to increase your confidence and productivity in your own code base. Agility. So agility with Ottoman, you can write code that's maintainable, testable, and has less boilerplate than if you were to use the Node.js SDK. It's not a knock on the Node.js SDK. In fact, if it wasn't for the Node.js SDK, we couldn't write Ottoman. But as a developer building with Couchbase, there are certain things that you're going to be doing that you don't want to repeat, and Ottoman kind of does that for you. It's already abstracted those things away. So on the left is some Node.js code, and on the right is some Ottoman code. The same code you would need to write in the SDK is on the left, and on the right is how you would write it in Ottoman. So this helps to improve your developer experience. Makes your code cleaner. You know, if you start to understand the Ottoman API, you become very familiar with how to do things. And overall, just less code to write and maintain gives you a faster time to market. We have several customers that are our own customers here at Couchbase that are already starting to take a look at Ottoman, and some, in fact, that kind of became a customer with Ottoman in mind, at least. So the abstractions, they're done for you. And since it's open source, you, the developer, also have the ability to give us feedback, create issues through our GitHub project, and contribute through pull requests. You know, fork the repository, make a change, submit it to us, and we'll take a look at it. Finally, data quality. What does Ottoman address when it comes to the 5 characteristics of data quality? So I know that we don't all remember at the top of our head the 5 characteristics of data quality. In fact, I'm looking at a screen that's telling me them, so I can easily rattle them off, but it's coherence. You know, how easy is it to find the data? Accuracy, how close is the data to reality? Orderliness, is the data in the right shape and format? Auditability, can the changes to the data be tracked? And completeness, can the data be interpreted? So having these characteristics in place is very important for our customers and developers that are looking to kind of adopt Couchbase. Improved data quality, so it leads to better decision-making across the org. It can increase your profitability, give you a competitive advantage. And without it, you can face financial impact, productivity challenges, and maybe even like reputational losses that typically aren't easily repaired. Along with data quality, you can kind of ensure data quality by the way of data integrity. So when using a relational database and planning to move to Couchbase, most of the data integrity constructs that a relational database offers is matched or exceeded in Couchbase in conjunction with Ottoman. This chart is a mapping between data integrity and data quality. So it shows how we can achieve data integrity with Ottoman. We will reference some of these features in the upcoming slides. Let's take a look at some of the Ottoman code, and we'll see how some of our key features relate to data quality and agility. So schemas and models. These are the starting point in Ottoman. Identifying and defining them are the most crucial element in building apps in Ottoman. Schemas help you define the structure and shape of your documents. They provide a way to associate data integrity. Capabilities like validators, constraints, hooks, and triggers. Those are all part of schemas. And then model will be the second one here. So models responsible for creating and reading documents from Couchbase. Basically, within a model, you're instructing where a document is stored, and you can use collections and scopes along with this. So you can use the default collection or scope, or you can specify a specific collection or scope. Now, once you define a schema, once you create an instance of a model, once you create an instance of a schema and define a model, you can create an instance of a document in your code. So documents are instances of your model in the smallest unit in the hierarchy. Schemas, and what I'm trying to say here is kind of like that schemas and models are going to help you to provide data quality, and that is one of our litties. Built-in model methods. So model methods like find and find one are means to manage data in Couchbase by performing basic CRUD operations. With these methods, we're hiding a lot of the complexity that you would otherwise have to manage yourself. By providing a simple interface to use and learn, you learn one interface, you kind of understand another one. Some model methods are backed by KV operations. Others, so key value operations, where you're just giving the database a key, it's giving you a document back. Others are backed by Nickel queries, and Nickel is SQL compatible, ANSI standard kind of SQL, and is our query language here at Couchbase. So when using our query languages, indexes are needed. Ottoman can help you manage those as well. You can add your own. But if you just go and add a schema and a model and some documents and persist those to the database, Ottoman is going to actually take care of creating some of your indexes for you to make sure that you don't get errors right away. But just know that you can use a mix or potentially use your own. You don't have to have Ottoman doing the index creation for you. You can actually opt out of that. Immutable. So here we are designating a field as immutable preserves the original value. This helps to keep future updates from overriding important fields. So immutable fields are ignored when doing an update operation. And this behavior can be overridden if needed. This gives you both data quality and agility. So in this document that you see here, we see that type is immutable : true, right? So in the old version of Couchbase, and we even carry this along for the purposes of Ottoman, a type can define, sort of like a collection does, kind of a grouping of documents. We might want to set that to true to make sure that no one can get rid of that field. As well, you could do it with any other field, right? And basically, once you set it, if anyone tries to update that model, they can still do an update, but that particular field, if it has a mutable on it, will not get updated. So that can be super helpful. And again, you can opt out of it as well. Timestamps allow for auditability of your documents. And when added, we will automatically add a created at and an updated field. It's that easy. We don't need to spend too much time here on timestamps, but if you add this little thing at the end here on your schema, you will ensure that you get created at and updated at documents. Created at is immutable. Updated gets updated every time you change that document. Hooks. One of my favorite. Hooks are similar in the relational world to triggers. Now, they help with data integrity. They are async middleware functions. They are registered and can be triggered every time you perform an operation on your data. So think pre and post operations when you're using these. In this example here, we convert a lower case upon save of your data. So these can be exported and used across projects and imported into other code bases. So if you set up some type of a pre or post hook, just know that you can use that, anywhere in your project, or potentially even export them out and use them in another project, which is very helpful. So yeah, hooks help with data quality and agility. Out of the box, Ottoman comes with custom data types. Beyond the obvious data types, you can also create your own custom types. So here in this example, we are defining a link type. To use custom data types, simply you just define first. You can see that number 1 here. So we're defining some type of a type, and then we're registering it, and then we can use it anywhere we want. And you can set up the definition and and kind of import it into other files if you want to. Kind of like with hooks, you can kind of use them anywhere. Constraints and custom validators. So this is to help you ensure your data accuracy. They can limit the values that can be stored as well. You can specify a required field or a default field as well, give you the ability to designate a min or a max value. So just like custom types, custom validators allow you to specify some special type of validator. In this example, we ensure that you can set more than 2 phone numbers. So down here at the bottom, you see the document. It's got 2 phone numbers. If you tried to set a third one, it could potentially fail and give you a nice error message. Or it may be if one of those phone numbers wasn't formatted correctly, you could have a validator for that as well. The query builder. This is one of my favorite things about Ottoman. I might have said one of the other things was my favorite thing, but this is really my favorite thing. So query builder is one of the more powerful features in Ottoman. So writing nickel queries and getting the syntax just perfect is a challenge, as we all know. Anyone who's been writing either SQL or nickel for a long time, sometimes you have to look things up and figure things out. As long as you understand the basic concepts of SQL or nickel, like you can use parameterized options, chained access functions, or a mix of the two. So you can use this feature to help you learn the nickel query language. And let me talk about that for a second here. So on number 1 here, we have an example of how to define parameters as an object and then pass those parameters into a query as the first argument. The second way to do this is to not even create a params object, but just in your query, you're going to chain on a select, a let, a where, or a limit to that query. All right, so that's parameters versus access function way of doing things when using the query builder. At the bottom here, mixed mode just shows like, hey, here's kind of like a mix of doing both of them together. The reason for mixed mode is more so that if you're converting code over from using one to the other, I really doubt you're going to use both of them at the same time. But if you do, it's not going to cause any type of an error. They're going to work perfectly and harmoniously together. A cool thing here at the end is we are console logging out that query variable. And what that does, so all the query builder does is help you build a string. That string is a nickel query. And if you can console log out your query down here at the end and see exactly what string we wrote from you. And this is kind of that discoverability that I was talking about. If you don't know nickel that well, but you understand selects and lets and wheres and limits, you can kind of do that through the API and it will show you, hey, here's the nickel that I wrote for you. And then you can go run that against the query analyzer and see if we did a good job. Future of Ottoman, we're considering adding several features in the near future. Enhanced Query Builder API. When the SDK, the Node.js SDK comes out with transactions, we're going to be adding that. Additional Capella support, GraphQL extensions. That's a little bit further down the road. Full text search also further down the road. But those are some of the things that people have been asking for. Also, one thing that you can't do in Ottoman right now, but it's kind of a high priority for us is sub-document operations. But there's also ways to kind of get around that if you're smart enough. Yeah, so that's the end of my slides for now. The demo link at the top, bit.ly/OttomanJS. This will take you to a repo that is on my GitHub. It's called travel-API. And in that README, you will find some information about Ottoman and help you get started, clone that repo, spin up a Couchbase instance, and try it out for yourself. So let's go ahead and get out of this. And what I want to do next is hop right into a demo. So this is a demo using Ottoman. Oh, wrong one. Here we go. So this is very similar. If you were to go to ottomanjs.com, in that site, or even in the link that I just sent you guys to, you will find I think it's called Try Ottoman and Try Ottoman TS. So the Try Ottoman repo is a vanilla JavaScript version of Ottoman. It basically helps you build a REST API. And then the other one is Try Ottoman TS. That's a TypeScript version of the exact same project. We keep them up to date together. So when we make changes in one, we make changes in both. If a new SDK is released, we update both the SDKs in both packages, make sure everything works, change out any code that might need to be changed. So they're always up to date. Both of those repositories that you can get to from the links I sent you, they run against the travel sample database, which is cool. I like that. But what I wanted to do here was to give you a slightly different stripped down version of just the very basics that you need to know. And you can run this against a local empty bucket of your choice. Now, we do follow the same kind of document, I guess, structure as airlines, airports, flight paths, and hotels that the travel sample database, the sample database from Couchbase gives you. However, we've stripped them down a little bit and made them a little bit more manageable to handle here in your application. So what I will go through at first is just showing you the package.json. So you'll notice here that I have Express and Ottoman. Those are my only dependencies. These dev dependencies here, these are just so I can use TypeScript. If I were using vanilla JavaScript, I could just nuke those guys and use regular JavaScript. When you install Ottoman, like I said before, you're only installing the Ottoman package. And then along with, you can either write the API yourself, or you can use something like Express to help you along the way. We chose Express because Express is one of the most, it's one of the most used kind of API frameworks out there for Node.js. And typically, if we can show examples of how to do something Express, you could potentially take that and use it in another framework if you wanted to. And the thing that I wanted to do in this repo, and that's also in the other repos that I'd mentioned earlier, is not just have like one server page that does all the work in one page, but instead break things up and kind of really abstract the things that need to and build a legitimate REST API where, all of these different files kind of help to set up what I would call more of a real world project. And we're going to start with this Ottoman global config. So with this Ottoman global config, I can set, we'll focus on these three for right now, but collection name. So I'm saying that out of all the API, out of my API that I'm building, all the documents that I'm going to be saving, unless I specify other words in another file, are going to be saved to the default collection. However, they're all going to be saved to the travel scope name. Okay, so we've kind of set up a default for the project. Does that mean that every document that we generate from this project has to use these? No, it'll just use that if you don't specify. If you specify in your model or schema, in your model that you want to use a different collection or scope name, you can totally override it. Key Generator Delimiter. This gives you the ability to create your own keys. Ottoman out of the box, if you don't use a key generator, then you're going to end up with a hash for your IDs for each of your documents. We went ahead and used a key generator here in this project so that you can see like, hey, I want, and the reason we used it is because we wanted to mimic the travel sample data set and how they have like airline _ number 1, and that would be like United Airlines. Airline _ 2 would be like Southwest Airlines, right? So we wanted to kind of replicate that and not just have a hash for that ID. So we're using a key generator in here. And we'll probably see that when we go through the files. Then we have an index. So this is kind of the file that bootstraps your entire project. We're just importing all of our controllers here. So a controller is going to kind of be for each route that we have. We have a hotels and airports and airlines and a flight paths controller. And you can see here, these are the paths that we want to set up for them. We've got the port that we're going to be running on when we run this locally. And then finally, down here at the bottom, we just have the basic connection stuff. So I'm just using a local instance and a bucket name called Travel API rather than Travel Sample because it's an empty bucket. And then the basic username and password. And then by having our app separated, we can actually ensure that you can test this easily. We don't have any tests in here. Maybe that's a little to-do thing, is to add some tests to this so that you guys can see how to test different controllers and stuff in Ottoman. We do have a project out there that does that. If anyone wanted to see that, they can always hit me up on Twitter and I can give you a link to that. Yeah, I won't go too far into this, but this just sets up some of the constructor and some of the private functions that are going to be available from our app, which is kind of like the Express app. We have some shared documents. So it's a controller type, custom. And these are the routes that we want to have for every single endpoint. Geolocation schema. So when you're creating a schema, you can totally create that in like a shared file and then share it across multiple models. I'll show you where this is used in different models. If you remember in our slides before, we were setting up a custom link type. This is all the code that you need to set that up, and you can put it in its own file and then import it into other files. And then we've also kind of abstracted out the code needed for making a response to the server and kind of put that in its own files. These are the things that you really need to do in a real world API project. So if you go to the Node.js SDK docs or the Ottoman docs, you're going to find, some samples of how to write code like all in like one file. Sometimes that's not helpful if you want to know kind of how to structure an entire API. So we'll take a real quick look at hotels, and we'll look at the model here. You'll see that we are using a validator. So we have a custom validator here, which checks to make sure that the phone is actually a phone number. And then this is the review schema. So every hotel has a review. Notice we've created a separate schema for review. And then our hotel schema, we are just referencing that review schema as an array. For our URL, we're going to say that it needs to be of type link type. And then our phone has a phone validator here. something that you can do cool with the phone validator is, I believe that you can make this an object, or no, you can make this an object. And then you can do something like regex colon, and then provide some type of a regex here. And that could potentially replace the need to add something like this. And then you could just maybe copy this variable, get rid of the function around it, and then just pass that regex in here. So that's another option but we wanted to show you the long way so that at least that was there in case you wanted to, because sometimes you might want to have other logic going on inside of your validator besides just checking it against a regular expression. All right. I think that's most of what we want to talk about. Everything else is pretty standard. Right, you need to implement all of the different kind of endpoints that we set up in our controllers. I'm sorry, in our shared folder we have here. Yeah. So for each endpoint, you want to set up, a get by ID, a post, a patch, a put, and a delete. And so when you create your controller here, you will want to kind of make sure that you set up something for all of those. And then I won't go over kind of all of the code here because this is something, if you really want to get started with Ottoman, my suggestion is to take a project like this, open it up in its own repository and its own VS Code, and put it over on a separate monitor. And then you start building your project and just use it as a reference. And if you say, oh, I wonder how to get by ID. Well, you just come over here, take a look at this one and say, oh, this is pretty simple. If I want to patch something, I want to put something, I want to delete something, or I want to do, a get and have some limits and skips or a filter or something like that. We've tried to kind of jam pack this with stuff, but also only put the absolute things that you need to really get started in here. And so each one of the airlines, airports, flight paths, and hotels, these are all folders that contain the models and controllers for those. We've got our shared folder, which is any type of a component that needs to be shared across multiple controllers or models, and then the basic setup files. And that's all you need to get going. Once I come down here and run npm start, I'd have to run npm install first. What that's going to do is it's going to go out. It's going to talk to my local instance, make sure that I have a bucket there called travel API. And it hopefully just went and set up all of my indexes for me. Here they are. There is like lookup airport by name was something that we didn't really look into, but if you go in here to the model, you will notice that we are defining a index here where we're saying, hey, we want to be able to search these airport documents by name using a nickel index. And then this find by name is just the name of it. So then we go back over here and look at our indexes. We should be able to see a find by name somewhere. Right here. So I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah. Anyway, so back to our buckets real quick. We need to just test this out and make sure everything works, right? So we can go into Postman. Oh, by the way, in here, do I still have the Postman files in here? Yeah, so you can import this Postman collection right here if you want to use Postman. I intentionally did not add Swagger into this this project because it muddies up the code, in my opinion. And I wanted this project to be like super to the point. So here's our airlines. We're going to create an airline, and then let's kind of switch one up, and we'll call another one like Couchbase Airlines. We do CBA and send that. Now we should be able to get all of our airlines. We should see 2 of them come back. And then we could potentially, we could do a patch on an airline. So let's change the S to a Z. Send that. Great. Now we do get airline by ID. Now the Z is there. And then if we go back and patch it again and change it to S, great, right? So, the basics are working here, and it seems that, the whole project is working. So I encourage you to go to, I'll go ahead and pull it up for you real quick. So this is the repo that link before would take you to. It's basically github.com/http junkie. Redis/Travel API. And by the way, the DA team wants to take these projects and move them onto Couchbase Labs. That's totally cool with me too.
Absolutely.
All right, let's get into kind of the next project that we're going to talk about. Let me close all these.
Hey, Eric, we had a quick question from chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the questions they were asking was, could you use Couchbase as a replacement for Redis, or does it complement it? And I think they were trying to compare to, like, if you have MongoDB, you may have to put, in fact, that's what the question says. In MongoDB, you put Redis in front of it. It's an interesting question. I'm looking for your take on it. I can give my take on it too, if you like.
Anything that you can do with MongoDB and Redis together, you can do with Couchbase.
Absolutely. I would even argue that you don't need it, though. The theory is that
yes, because we have things in Couchbase that do the same as Redis.
Exactly, and that's the whole thing. Is that we're not feature comparable to MongoDB. Sure, MongoDB is a NoSQL database, but we have so many other things built into us that MongoDB doesn't. And the way that our node infrastructure works, where you add nodes to the clusters, it dynamically scales. You don't necessarily need that per se. You just need to add more nodes of a certain type. So fourth thing, and honestly, also the second thing about Couchbase, just real quickly, is that all the data lives in memory first. We only write the disk after, when we kind of pause and we have little breaks, we write it to disk. So everything's in mem to start out with, right? So the theory of Redis is that everything's in memory, it's super fast. In Couchbase, we're always fast because of that. And so it's kind of comparing apples to oranges a little bit, but there, in many ways, Couchbase does very similar things to Redis. But we're kind of like Redis and Mongo put together in some ways. You could kind of think of it that way. Now, if you needed it, you could put Redis in front of Couchbase, but most of the time, I think most of our customers just don't need it. They don't need the extra complicity to it because of the fact that Couchbase scales so well. And you don't have to worry about things like sharding, where you do have to worry about that with other database platforms.
Yeah, so another question, why Couchbase container image is so much larger than, say, for example, Postgres or MongoDB. So when you're, so I would say that the container image, Couchbase has a lot of features built into it that are not necessarily available in other document databases. I would not compare it with Postgres. I would compare it with MongoDB. It's the best one, or maybe a document DB or something like that. But all of the additional things that you can do with XDCR and that kind of stuff are built in. So of course you're going to have a larger package size. It's more of an enterprise database than it is, for the average developer who wants to build a blog. So you need all that stuff kind of built in, I assume. I am not from the server side.
No, you're right. But we have things like, we have analytics built in, right? Most platforms don't have analytics built in. We have things like full text search built in. So we have features that mirror other products like Elasticsearch. We have a full text search engine that is really, really good. You don't necessarily need Elasticsearch because of our full text search is so good. We have analytics built into it. Now, of course, you could turn any of these services on or off when you install Couchbase. So if you just want to run query, you can run query. If you want to run a couple nodes with analytics, you could do that. However, all the bits to run all those different services are available in the container. So it's kind of like you pick what you want to run when you set up your node to install it, to say, look, maybe I just want database and indexing and the basic query stuff, or maybe I do need some of those more advanced features like analytics or full text search.
Cool.
I'm going to let you get back to it.
All right. So this next one that I'm going to show you here is called Rage with Couchbase. Some people from Couchbase might have seen this before. I have updated it to update all the packages in it. And there's actually a 2021 version. If you're really interested in this project, that in about a day or so, I will have also done all the updates to that one, but it provides a few more GraphQL endpoints than the one I'm about to show you does. But they're both here. Rage with Couchbase. You can add the -2021 on the end and check out the branch that I have up there that's it has like a little bit more going on. But I want to start with this one. So I'll copy this over into, because there wasn't a link to this one. So I'm just going to copy this into the private chat and you guys can share it as you need. All right. So I'll pull this off the screen. And what I wanted to show you here is just, this is a full stack JavaScript application, and I've put it all into one repo. So one thing I want to kind of do is kind of show off, if you're not very familiar with JavaScript or Node JS, kind of some of the things that you can do, which I think are cool. So the entire folder here, Rage with Couchbase, is its own NPM package or NPM project, and it only installs one dependency concurrently. What this allows us to do is define a script for the client and the server. And then when I run npm start, it can concurrently kind of run them both at the same time. I've also got a post install here so that if you kind of clone this down for the first time, you only have to run an npm install. Oops. At the root level of the project, and it'll install into all three projects. So just kind of stating that up front so that you don't go in there and start installing at different directories. You could if you wanted to. And when I run npm start now, it is going to, first it's going to spin up the server, and then it's going to spin up the client. It's going to make my GraphQL API available, and now it's going to launch the actual React project. So everything that you're going to see here on the front end is contained within this React Apollo client. You can dig further into that project and understand how React and Apollo work with kind of fetching GraphQL using GraphQL queries. I won't necessarily go over all that. I specifically kept this project very small and just doing one thing because I want to show this is kind of like a hello world to full stack JavaScript using Couchbase, React, Apollo, GraphQL, and Express. And all it does is pretty much you can go to this airlines page and it's going to read the travel sample data set. And right now we are actually pointing at the Capella server. And it's basically going and grabbing all of the airlines that are in the UK. When I click on one, it kind of loads the information over onto the right-hand side here. So yeah, like this isn't the most involved app, but it's I feel that as a kind of a developer advocate and someone that's kind of making demos for other people, the point really is to give them just the pieces they need to kind of do this thing that you're intending to let them do and not put anything else in it that's not required. If you really wanted to see how to build a React project better, like from scratch, you could do, I have one called HTTP chunky/React from scratch. So this is a repo where I kind of walk you through building an entire React application without using create React app and setting everything, all the configuration, all the Babel, Webpack, and all that stuff up yourself. If you want to learn that, I've got another repo for that. But this one, again, is just showing us how to use kind of a full stack React Apollo GraphQL and Express server. So then we have our Express server up here, and it's basically just one page, like I was telling you not to do earlier. But in here, we have updated our package.json to work with the latest release of the Couchbase Node JS SDK, and we are just doing some very basic stuff. Now, the only thing I changed in this project to get it working from a local kind of Couchbase instance to a Capella instance is I went into my environment variables file here, and I added a new environment variable called cbssl. And this is either going to be set to true or false. So if I were to set up my credentials for connecting locally, I would put false here. And if I would spell it right, obviously. And if I were to set it up to work with Capella, I would put true there. And then what I've done is inside the server.js, I have just built a little bit of extra logic here to create either a connection string that will connect locally on HTTP or connect with Capella. Capella will require to use SSL. So, but what we do to kind of make it a little bit easier for you, of course, you can set up your own certificates and everything if you want. This project doesn't do that, so we include this SSL no verify here. So still an encrypted connection, but you're not being required to verify through, a public key and a private key kind of thing. So, and then when we get in here, like this is very basic stuff. So the same, if you go and look at any of our Node.js examples of how to connect, same thing here. You call Couchbase Connect, you pass it the connection string, you pass it your username and password, you're good to go. And then what we do is we build, we're using an Express GraphQL. So we're using Express, and we're also using Express GraphQL. And what that gives us the ability to do is kind of set up all of these types. And so airport is for our airport model in our database. Airline is for our airline. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling out the information from that model in the database, from that document in the database that I want to display in my app, or I want to give my the users of my API access to. Airport, I believe, either airline or airport has actually a couple extra properties that I'm not surfacing here. And then I've created some custom types. So Airlines UK is going to be an array of the airline document. Airline by key will just return a single airline, not an array of them. And you'll need to pass in an ID, which is an integer and is required. So if it's airline underscore number 1 in the database, you would need to pass it a 1. Yeah, and so that's pretty much all the setup I need to do for building my schema for my GraphQL API. And then I need to have this root object. And so in this root object, I have basically a few different properties here. I've got a airlines UK, an airline by key, and an airports UK. So for my application, all that I really need is this airlines UK. It's the only one I'm using in my application. And I just need to be able to go and select all of the items from the database where the airline country equals United Kingdom. And then I've added a few other ones in here just so that you can see how to do them. Like if you want to get something by key using GraphQL, or if you want to query the airports, it's pretty much the same thing. Now, that other project that I showed you that was Rage with Couchbase-2021, that one actually has some mutation, basically a mutation so that you can set up an endpoint that maybe modifies data in the database. But I wanted to keep this really simple for right now. And each of these is just a function, an async function that tells GraphQL how it's going to get that data. That's all you have to provide here. And then at the bottom, we literally tell it the port, where our actual GraphQL endpoint, our graphical terminal, if you want to call it that, or IDE is going to be located. And then we just use the normal kind of Express stuff to spin up our application and pass it that server URL and that and the information that Express GraphQL needs to make a GraphQL endpoint work with an Express project. So you'll just notice that there's not a whole lot to this. And of course, if you want to build a very, very complicated GraphQL API, it's going to be more work than this. But this gets you started at least. And if we spin this up, we'll see that we have a I'll pull this up here. So I believe to get to our GraphQL API, we got to do 4000 / GraphQL. Now we can see here. We can see, here's get airlines by key, where I've given it the ID 12, and it goes and grabs that airline by key. I've also got some other things down here that show you kind of, here's how you would create or get the airlines by UK. This will not be using a query variable. Now here are all the UK airlines. So yeah, graphical is pretty cool. Any GraphQL project that you create, you have the option of kind of rendering out this IDE that helps you to kind of figure out what your GraphQL queries need to look like. And then I take that and I would go into my React Apollo client and I would find the component that is using that. And then here I'm importing this airline GQL. So this is where I pasted that GraphQL code. And it grabs all the airlines, and then I'm doing some, some mapping and stuff and filtering to be able to provide a list of them on the left and some details on the right-hand side. So again, very basic application. What did I need to do in order to get this working with Capella? So what I did is I came in here, I did the basic registration, free trial registration, acted like I was not an employee. I don't know if we have any special employee discounts or anything, but so I just set something up, and I came in here, and there was already a travel sample database, which is great because this works off of the travel sample database. So good, I've got that. And then I went to the connect tab here. It gives me, don't delete my database while I'm on the stream, but if you want to later, you can. I'll delete it after the call. I need to tell it what my IP is. I'm not going to show that to you guys, but you can click on this, and there's literally a little pop-up, and you click one button, it copies your IP, and then you're done. And then you need to set up your credentials. So you guys have already seen my credentials, but I came in here, I created a username named Eric and set up a password for it and told it that I wanted to give it access to all of my buckets. So that's Travel API and Travel Sample. I just said, give me access to all of them. I want read and write on both. And so now I've got that. Is there anything else I did? Well, yeah, I checked to see where the proper indexes there, which they were, because Travel Sample comes loaded with those. I even ran my Travel API Ottoman project against it. So was doing some work there, but yeah, I mean, it was pretty basic. I already kind of showed you that the only thing I really needed to do this app, and I didn't have to do much. I just needed to kind of tell it what my credentials were, and I already have a place for my credentials in my application. But since I figured, I'm thinking like, well, what if I was in the real world? What if this is a real application? Would I potentially be developing locally against a development database, and then maybe when I go to production using Capella? If so, then I need something to kind of switch between the two. So I added this extra parameter here. And then, of course, then that's how my query string gets built here to decide whether I'm going to be connecting through SSL or not. And that was it. I loaded that stuff in, and it worked instantly. So connecting to Capella, for the most part, is no different than connecting to a local instance. And yeah, and so that's most of what I got. I know we're very close to the end here. I do want to leave some time for questions.
No, that was great, Eric. I mean, it's pretty crazy here. I mean, to see that, and how that was a lot of information to start out with. So many different things.
Recorded video.
Yeah,
so you can hit at half speed.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see Ottoman. Obviously.
Thank you, Arun.
Yeah, and I think Ottoman's pretty great. It's pretty cool that you could just define a schema, and you're going to town, and you're just saying, hey, this is what the format of my document looks like. It's doing so much of the work for you. When you look at it compared to other frameworks like .NET, man, that seems like it's just a lot of code saving.
It does. It really does help you to rapidly build APIs faster. Yeah. And it's not. So I didn't show you guys kind of working with GraphQL in Ottoman. Mm-hmm. You can do that. I think in the future, what we'd like to actually do is create a GraphQL Compose plugin that works with it, that makes it to where you can share your Ottoman models with and types and stuff with your GraphQL. But you totally could build an Express application, use Ottoman, and just tell GraphQL, how to fetch your data and stuff, and it would still work. You would just use Ottoman. Yeah. Any questions, guys?
I think we had the first couple questions there. One thing I did want to kind of quickly cover, and it's kind of cool, is that our Christmas present to everybody this year, our holiday present to everybody, is that today we shipped Couchbase Server 702. And so there's a blog post up on the Couchbase website. And so if you're on the 7 train and you're looking for an update, it's out there. There are some new rules to the security changes with TLS that you'll definitely want to read about if you're an admin or if you're running a Couchbase Server 7. And there is a new cool feature inside of there with charts with query analytics. So I just wanted to kind of make sure the community I didn't realize that we announced it on Twitter literally as the stream was going. So I wanted to throw that out real quick to let people know. But I think we answered most of the questions earlier about the theory of why the container and image was so big, and then also whether or not it was a replacement for Redis. And
do we have a hard stop at the top of the hour? Do we have a minute or two?
No, we've got all the time in the world. I mean, obviously, we're recording this, so anybody that
So a few of the things that I would say is that when I came to Couchbase 2 years ago, I kind of assessed the landscape and thought, what do JavaScript developers want when they come to a document database? And for the reasons I told you earlier, being able to set up those validators and the hooks and even being able to kind of use like the query builder to kind of discover nickel for someone who's not experienced. Those are great things. But one of the things that we've done over the last year is we worked directly with a client who shall not be named, but they were coming from a MongoDB database using Mongoose. So Mongoose is the ODM for Mongo. And we wanted to make sure, of course, we're not, our code is completely different. We wrote it all from scratch, but we wanted to make sure that someone coming from Mongo or Mongoose we had parity with 90% of the things that were there, and that if they wanted to migrate from Mongo over to Couchbase, that there was no problem. Of course, Ottoman provides a lot of these awesome features that I told you about. But we wanted to make sure that if we had clients that needed to migrate for any reason, that it was a very a smooth transition. So I wanted to put that out there. So we had that in mind when we built it. And then, so we released it on September 29th, and we just had a new kind of very minor release because the SDK updated. And I'm just very excited to see kind of what extra features and stuff Ottoman adds over the next year, which will be very cool to kind of see how this plays out. But this is the first thing that typically you want as a JavaScript developer coming to a database like this. Even if you're not using it right off the bat, it's good to know that it's there and that you have it if you want to use it.
Right, it's a flexibility. So you have Ottoman there, and it's flexible for you. And then if you find that you need some performance and you still need to talk to the general Node SDK, you can do that too. I think that's pretty cool that you have that flexibility available to you.
Yeah, as far as performance, we've from the basic stuff that I've been doing as a developer, I haven't found any huge performance implications. Sure. There is a little bit different kind of development flow when you're using it versus the SDK, obviously because it's going to, or has the ability to kind of start up, check that your database is there, check to make sure that the indexes are there or not. And, there's always, so like, do I use the Ottoman indexes? Do I have certain indexes that I already have in my data, right? You can point Ottoman at an existing database that's already there and already has indexes. So, yep. So there's kind of things like that to think about that you may not have to think about when you're using the Node.js SDK, but it's kind of like weigh your options. With a video like this, at least you can know what Ottoman can do for you. Yep. And you can make a decision yourself whether you want to use it or maybe eventually use it. And then of course the SDK is pretty cool. So I'm just joking. The SDK is awesome. Without the SDK, you can't build Ottoman.
Sure, absolutely makes sense, right? Awesome. Well, I think the other thing is also that really just comes on the indexes. I think everything in Couchbase, anytime somebody has a problem either with performance or something else, it's almost always, what is your query? What is your index on it? Yep. Making sure those kind of things are there. That's almost any database platform, really.
That's why we have the ability to console.log out that that query that you're building from the query builder, as well with the find methods and the methods that actually use nickel under the hood. You can do the same thing with those if you turn a debug mode on.
That's really cool. That's a cool tip, I think, right there. Especially if you're debugging, make sure debug mode's on.
I could hear Arun yelling that at me through the YouTube verse.
Yeah,
it's a button. You can do it with the find too.
It's like, well, it's one of those things that you don't learn until you have that battle scar, right? It's not until you're like, why doesn't this work? And you're like, oh, wait, I could do that?
Well, here's the thing, though. What I think with that is you're less likely to look at that because like Ottoman is doing something fishy. Yep. Like I like the idea of turning that on just to kind of see, well, what is Ottoman doing under the hood? Yep. Are they doing it the most performant way that I would think that they would do it? Maybe I can write the way I would do it and see how Ottoman's doing it and compare them both in the query analyzer or something like that. But it's there. We're not hiding anything from you. You have the repo that you can pull down, clone, make changes to, submit a pull request. Hopefully we like it. Or a lot of debug options actually in the program itself to kind of see what things are going on behind the hood, what kind of queries are being generated, and how it's interacting with the database. So we wanted to make sure that all that stuff's kind of front and center and that there's nothing being hidden. There's no magic going on. There's magic. It's just not hidden. You can see the tricks. The tricks can be unveiled.
Absolutely. The one thing the final thing I want to kind of also point out is that you wrote a really great quick start guide to Ottoman on our developer portal. And
Yep.
so if you go over to the developer portal and you go to the tutorial quick starts, there's a great Ottoman the quick
Intro
start
to
guide.
Ottoman. I would say if you're going to go read one of the Intro to Ottomans, look for the one that's written by Arun. It's the most up to date.
Okay.
Yeah, of course I helped out with a little bit, but his was written more recently, so I would definitely check that out. It's in the blog though.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
There's also a podcast on Hacker Noon, which we talk about just JavaScript and Ottoman. If
Okay.
you didn't get enough Ottoman here today, you can go check that out.
Absolutely. So obviously our website, there was a couple things that just went through in chat that you can kind of go through and check those out at. Folks, I want to appreciate everybody for sticking in through the end. Eric, I want to highly appreciate you coming in and talking about the world of JavaScript and how developers can quickly come in and use their existing JavaScript skills, regardless if it's Ottoman or Node JS, to kind of pick up really quickly and get things up and running, which is the secret, right, to doing software development. And we support all that with Couchbase. It's a very complete package. If you want to come in, you don't really have to do a lot. Throw a couple of node packages in and you're up and running. So
and there's no better time to get started with Couchbase than right now. Over the last year, we've released Couchbase 7 and Scopes and Collections. And this is a kind of a point in Couchbase history where things have changed a little bit. And of course, there's always a little bit of scrambling to getting things right, make sure everything works with it. But believe me, that working with Couchbase 7 over the previous versions and using scopes and collections enables so many more new things, and all of our tools are updated to work with it. And even Ottoman can work with both legacy and current Couchbase 7 databases. It does not matter. You write the models and the schemas and stuff. It figures out which database you're using and does things accordingly.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Amazing. Well, folks, I want to thank everybody. Eric, thank you for coming in. Thanks for all the repos and all the examples. I want to thank everybody for attending. We will be back next month with another talk, and we'll be talking about some stuff. I hope everybody has a happy and safe holidays, regardless of where you are in the world. Please go out, stay safe.
Can I give a few shout-outs?
Well, absolutely, Eric. Go for it.
Arun, project manager for Ottoman, along with myself. Brett Lawson, who was the original creator of Ottoman before we revamped it, and also has builds the SDK and works with libcouchbase. So he was instrumental in making sure that we could get things built and changed in the SDK in order to work with Ottoman. And then our Cuban links, our contracting team that helped to build it, specifically Lino. Just amazing developers and super easy to work with. And these guys all need credit for Ottoman because it's an amazing tool.
Cool. So Eric,
I'll be quiet now. Sorry.
No. So Eric, if someone was looking to find out you on the Twitters, the Twitterverse, or somewhere to find out and follow you on all your adventures with JavaScript and stuff, where would they go to do that?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at httpjunkie, or you can send me Ethereum on httpjunkie.eth.
All right, I appreciate it. Once again, folks, thanks everyone for attending. We'll see you next month. Have a safe and happy holidays. Take care, everybody.